Welcome to our latest video. Today, we will explore a mysterious case surrounding the disappearance of an innocent girl, leading to heartbreaking events and surprising twists. You will experience thrilling moments, from shocking discoveries to painful truths that you may have never heard before. Get ready for a dramatic journey with in-depth analyses from legal experts and detectives. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our videos and receive special offers. Let's uncover the truth together. On a chilly December evening in 2020, a nightmare unfolded in a typical home in Sandy Springs, Georgia. 2-year-old Fallon Fridley fell into a critical condition, and the cause was a babysitter.
Exactly right. My 2 kids are 100% healthy. Have you ever thought about that?
29,
you ever thought about that?
Looked after Fallon several times before and had created a positive impression in the eyes of the girl's parents.
She fell off a
Tonight,
slide at the
everything
playground
would
after
change
that
forever.
too.
But
The little girl lay in the hospital with
back.
severe injuries,
So how would that
a skull
put bruises
fracture,
for her?
a swollen brain,
stop.
and internal bleeding. The police received an emergency call around 9:20 p.m. When Fallon's parents received the news, they were utterly unprepared for what was about to come. "Our daughter is injured and unresponsive," Kirsty's frantic voice echoed through the phone. But something was truly amiss. Kristen and Cameron, Fallon's parents, rushed to the hospital, their hearts filled with anxiety. They had no idea that when they arrived, their daughter would be facing a life-and-death battle. The air was thick with fear and dread. When they reached the hospital, the doctor delivered the news.
Hearing about Fallon, a 2-year-old in critical condition, hits you like a punch to the gut. As a parent, I can't imagine the terror Kristen and Cameron felt rushing to the hospital, clinging to hope. The doctor's words, "We're doing everything we can," carry a weight that's almost unbearable. This case isn't just about facts. It's about a family's worst nightmare unfolding in real time. Why didn't anyone notice something was wrong sooner? It's a question that haunts me as
No
we
one
dive
could
deeper
imagine
into this
what
tragedy.
had happened to their beloved child. Kirsty, the babysitter, who had been the last person with Fallon, now became the primary suspect in the investigation. But the truth could be hidden behind deceit. In the interrogation room, detectives posed tough questions to Kirsty. "Can you recount the events of the day?" They knew that her words could hold the truth, or chilling lies. Kirsty sat there, eyes closed as if trying to sift through her memories. "We played at the park," she started, her voice trembling. "The little girl, she just fell a little." Her stories seemed inconsistent, failing to explain Fallon's serious injuries. How could a minor fall result in such severe harm? The detectives realized they were dealing with a dangerous game. Kirsty seemed to be trying to protect herself, while the truth slowly began to surface. "You know the state of the little girl right now, don't you?" A question like a knife, making it impossible for her to evade. The tension in the air escalated as Kirsty felt the pressure from the detectives' sharp gazes. She struggled to assert that Fallon was perfectly fine, but clearly that was not true. In her mind, a rising fear emerged. Could she escape the grasp of the law? The detectives recognized that they needed to extract more information from Kirsty. They began probing the relationship between her and Fallon's family, emphasizing that Kirsty had played an important role in the girl's life over time. "How many times have you babysat Fallon?" one detective asked, hoping the question would reveal inconsistencies in Kirsty's story. "About 4 days a week," she replied confidently. But that confidence quickly wavered as the detectives brought up details about Fallon's condition, the injuries, and the suspicions surrounding the investigation.
All right, Kirsty. This is my partner, Detective Pearson.
Hello, Mr. Person.
Hello. Is you really late? I think it's so stuff being here.
Yeah, I'm already glad. I'm always off 10 in the morning, so thirsty.
Gotcha. Well, it's hard because right now we're in the weather where you can get cold.
You can wear a sweatshirt and shorts at the same time.
Yeah, it's so jacked up right now. Sorry, my notes are all jacked up right now because it's been one of those days, unfortunately.
See you better, Mom.
What's that?
Better, Mom.
I did, yeah.
How's she doing?
She's obviously upset. I don't think there's any way to not be right now, not be upset. But she's upset. I met
Cameron?
Cameron, that him is too. I reserve judgment because that's what I do.
Kirsty attempted to adjust her narrative, but each time she opened her mouth, it felt as if she were drifting further from the truth. She described an ordinary morning, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "The little girl had breakfast, then played with my daughter," Kirsty said, but the detectives couldn't help but doubt what they were hearing. Kirsty insisted that Fallon had only been injured from falling off a swing. But it was suspicious why she hadn't mentioned any injuries before the girl was taken to the hospital. The detectives knew time was running out, and they needed to uncover the truth before it was too late. The tension heightened when one of the detectives decided to drop a bombshell that shocked Kirsty. "We have photos," he said. "We have evidence regarding the girl's condition. She didn't just fall." That's Nick. A significant question arose. Was Kirsty truly a victim of an unfortunate accident, or was she hiding a terrible secret? This story was just beginning, and secrets would soon be revealed, unfolding an emotionally charged and tense investigation. Kirsty sat there, hands tightly clasped, her face pale as the detective's words echoed in her mind. She felt as though the air in the room was becoming suffocating. "We have evidence," one detective affirmed, his gaze unwavering on Kirsty, "and we need to know the truth." "But I already told you," Kirsty stammered. "The little girl just fell off a swing. It was nothing serious." She tried to cling to her reasoning, but the more she spoke, the more she felt cornered. The serious injuries on the little girl's body could not have come from just a minor fall. They decided to change tactics, starting to question Kirsty about her past. "Can you tell us more about your relationship with Fallon's family?" the detective asked. Kirsty quickly defended herself, claiming she had always cared for and looked after Fallon like a mother, insisting there was no reason to doubt her. "Really?" the detective replied, a hint of skepticism in his tone. "Then why didn't you notice any injuries on the girl before calling for help?" Each question from them felt like a sharp knife stabbing into Kirsty's mind, and she felt the detective's eyes burning into her. The interrogation continued, growing more tense as the detectives gradually asserted their suspicions toward Kirsty. She could feel that their questions were leading toward an uncomfortable conclusion. She looked toward the window, where the outside light was fading, symbolizing her hope slipping away. "We know you were the last one to care for Fallon," one detective said, "and we know that you have a motive to hide the truth." Kirsty felt the weight of those words crush her. She didn't know how to prove her innocence. Meanwhile, the images of Fallon in a critical state flashed through her mind. "Please tell me she's okay," Kirsty whispered, but deep down, she knew that wasn't possible. She felt as if everything was collapsing around her. Amidst the suffocating atmosphere of the interrogation room, Kirsty began to weave a different story. A story about an unfortunate child, about a babysitter who just wanted to help but couldn't escape the horrific injuries the little girl had endured. "I don't know," she said, her voice quivering. "I didn't hurt that little girl." The tension rose as the detectives realized that something was off about Kirsty's account. They decided to employ a different strategy. They began discussing her past, the unusual signs in Kirsty's personal life, and gradually asserted that she was indeed responsible for Fallon's condition. But Kirsty didn't want to admit it. She wanted to protect herself, not just for her own sake, but also for her daughter Harper. "I've never hurt any child," she cried out, but the determination in her voice couldn't mask the panic within. "I'm just a babysitter. I couldn't harm her." The tension was escalating, and every eye was fixed on Kirsty, as if waiting for a singular answer. She felt as if everything in her life was being put on trial. Every word, every action could bring her closer to the terrible truth she was trying to conceal. Ultimately, the detectives decided they would not let Kirsty easily escape the truth. They gave her one last chance. "Be honest with us, Kirsty. This doesn't just affect your life. It also impacts the future of an innocent child."
Kirsty's trembling voice in that interrogation room sends chills down my spine. You can feel her panic, but something doesn't add up. The detectives are circling, and her story about a minor fall feels like a house of cards about to collapse. It's infuriating to think someone might be hiding the truth when a child's life is on the line. Legally, inconsistencies like hers raise red flags. Detectives know bruises don't lie. What was she protecting? Herself, or something? Darker. The tension here is palpable, and it's only getting worse.
Knew that the truth could ruin everything. It was a battle not just between life and death, but also between truth and deceit. Kirsty felt the pressure mounting, like a candy being squeezed tightly between fingers with no way to escape. She took a deep breath, trying to find a way to justify what had happened. "I didn't do anything," she said, her voice trembling. "I loved that girl like my own daughter. I couldn't hurt her." But these words couldn't erase the terrifying images in the detectives' minds. They had seen the photos of Fallon, the horrifying injuries, the bruises that could not be explained by just a fall. "You know these injuries couldn't have come from an accident," one detective stated, his tone mocking. "You have to face the truth." Kirsty's mind felt chaotic. She wondered if she had let everything go too far. Images of Fallon, the happy little girl playing, now transformed into nightmares. "I can't let this happen," she told herself. Every question from the detective felt like a knife stabbing her heart. "You were with Fallon all day. Did you notice any signs that something was wrong?" the detective continued to ask. Kirsty shook her head, but memories suddenly surfaced. The image of Fallon occasionally looking upset or moments when she didn't want to eat. "She seemed a bit uncomfortable, but I didn't think it was anything serious," Kirsty said, but she could feel the uncertainty in her voice. The detectives observed every gesture of Kirsty. They realized that she was very tense, and they decided to shift the interrogation toward her boyfriend, Jeffrey. "Cameron, Fallon's stepfather, has a history of violence. Do you know that?" a detective asked. "I don't know much about him," Kirsty replied, her face suddenly pale. "But I don't think he's involved. He's not kind of person." She tried to defend Cameron, but the detectives noticed the insecurity in Kirsty's tone. "It's not like that, Kirsty. We need to know the truth," the detective said, keeping his tone firm. "Why would you leave Fallon with someone with a criminal background? Do you think that could endanger her?" Kirsty felt like every gaze was fixed on her, like a sharp knife stabbing into her mind. "I didn't think that would happen. I can't imagine Cameron would hurt her. I trust him," she said, but fear and doubt began to creep into her mind. The detectives decided to give Kirsty some time to think. They stepped out, leaving her alone in the cold interrogation room. Every second felt like a century. She felt the panic rising. Why was she here? Why were there these injuries? A dark thought crossed her mind. She knew she was the last one with Fallon, and everything was slowly turning toward her. She began to feel trapped in a snare of her own making. Images of Fallon, the cheerful, innocent girl, gradually transformed into unescapable nightmares. When the detectives returned, they seemed to have made a decision. "Kirsty, we need to know exactly what happened that day. Once again, tell us what transpired between you and Fallon," one detective said. "We were just playing. The girl was completely fine," Kirsty insisted. But now, her tone was no longer convincing. They continued to apply pressure, and Kirsty felt like everything was collapsing around her. "You can't keep lying," the detective replied. "We have evidence that something terrible happened." They relentlessly presented evidence, each photo, each detail about Fallon's condition. The tension and anxiety increased, and Kirsty could not maintain her composure. "Please, help me," she cried out, her voice echoing in the interrogation room. "I didn't hurt her." But she knew that might not be enough to save her. She was trapped in a whirlpool from which she could not escape. The interrogation dragged on, questions coming like a storm. Kirsty felt as though she was sinking into a deep abyss, and each question plunged her deeper. She just wanted to escape this place, but deep down she understood that the truth could not be hidden forever. Eventually, the detectives were prepared for a major turning point. They wanted to put her in an unpredictable situation to gauge her reaction. One detective sighed, looking directly into Kirsty's eyes. "We know you were the last one with Fallon. If you don't tell us the truth, things will only get worse." Amidst the pieces of truth and lies, Kirsty felt like she was on the brink of panic. Would she have the courage to face what she had done? And the feeling of panic surged. When they returned, Kirsty was ready to face the truth. She was determined not to let anything harm the girl any further. "I will speak," she began, her voice more resolute. "I will tell everything. I don't want to keep secrets anymore." Those words rang out like a promise, and in that moment, she knew her life would never be the same. Kirsty sat up straight, the determination in her eyes becoming clear. She knew she could no longer avoid the truth. "I will talk about that day," she began, her voice filled with apprehension but also certainty. "I have to." The detectives immediately focused their attention, their eyes lighting up as if searching for a glimmer of hope in the dense darkness. "Good, Kirsty," one detective said. "Tell us everything that happened." "We went to the park, and Fallon and Harper played together. Everything was normal until we got home." Kirsty began to recount. Each word flowed like fragments in her memory, but worry was still evident on her face. "When we got back, I cooked for the two girls. Fallon seemed a bit uncomfortable, but I thought it was just because she didn't want to eat." "Do you remember what you fed her?" a detective asked, taking notes in his notebook. "Did she eat anything unusual?" "No, nothing unusual," Kirsty hurriedly replied, but her voice held a hint of uncertainty. "She only had some snacks, and then she wanted to sleep." "Why didn't you notice that she might not be okay?" the detective continued to inquire. "Did you see any signs that she wasn't feeling well?" "When she didn't eat, I just thought it was normal," Kirsty said, but a sense of guilt began to overwhelm her mind. She recalled that moment, when she laid Fallon down, the girl's smile faded, and everything plunged into darkness. "I can't imagine what happened," she sobbed. "How did you call for help?" the detective asked, trying to clarify every detail. "What did you do when you saw she wasn't responding?" Kirsty recalled that terrifying moment. "When I saw her lying still, I panicked," she said, her voice trembling. "I called for help immediately, but I didn't know she was so seriously hurt." The painful memories surged back, causing tears to stream down her cheeks. "Do you think there's anything you haven't told us?" the detective asked, his tone serious. "Was there anyone else there?" Kirsty shook her head, but inside, the pieces of truth were beginning to emerge. "No, it was just me and the girls. No one else." But deep down, a doubt began to spark. She wondered if she might have overlooked something important. "Do you remember the last time the girl left the room?" the detective continued. "Did she go outside before you called for help?" "I'm not sure," Kirsty sighed. "Maybe she went into the room to play with Harper, but I didn't pay attention." She felt like everything was slowly slipping away, the details in her story becoming hazy. As the atmosphere in the room grew tense, one detective began asking harder questions. "Did you ever do anything to make the girl cry? Was there something that scared her?" Kirsty felt like the chair beneath her was swaying. "No, I would never do that," she protested. "I love that girl." But she sensed the skeptical gaze of the detectives. They were not just looking for an answer. They wanted to see the hidden truth. Then, in a moment of silence, Kirsty began to think about what had happened in that house. She remembered keeping her daughter close, and the times when the girl suddenly became quiet. Maybe those small actions had put a lot of pressure on Fallon. "I don't know what happened to her," she exclaimed, "but I didn't want that to happen. I don't want to lose her." "You won't lose her if you speak the truth," the detective advised. "We can help, but you need to be honest with yourself." Now Kirsty felt like she was standing between two cliffs. On one side was the truth she didn't want to face. On the other was the cover-up she couldn't maintain forever. Did she want to save herself or do everything to protect Fallon? The pain and anxiety surged within her, like a turbulent wave crashing against the shore. Finally, she decided. "I will talk," Kirsty said, her voice stronger. "I will tell everything." Those words came out like a promise, an acceptance she could no longer evade. She knew this was her only chance to find the light in this dark night. But could her words bring justice for Fallon, or would they simply pull her down into another abyss? In that suspenseful moment, Kirsty knew.
Kirsty's breaking, and it's heartbreaking to watch. Her tears, her pleas loved Fallon like her own. But love doesn't explain those injuries. Negligence, or something worse. The legal system doesn't care about intentions, it demands accountability. If she missed signs of distress, that's a failure with devastating consequences. I feel for her, trapped in that room, but my heart aches more for Fallon, caught in a tragedy no one saw coming. What could have saved her? A question that lingers like a ghost.
Breath, trying to regain her composure. She felt as if every detective's gaze was waiting for the truth to be revealed. I I remember every moment of that day, she began, her voice slightly trembling but determined. Start from when you received Fallon from her family, one detective advised. At around 6 a.m., Fallon's father brought her to my house, Kirsty began. She was very cheerful, running around playing with Harper. I felt everything was fine. The memory of those moments flashed in her mind, a warm picture that had now been shattered. And then what did you do? The detective continued to take notes. We had breakfast together. I gave her some cereal, cookies, and snacks. I knew she liked sweets, but I also tried to get her to eat vegetables, Kirsty said, her gaze becoming distant as she recalled. Did you notice anything unusual? Was there anything that made you feel worried? The detective asked, emphasizing every small detail. The little girl seemed a bit quieter than usual, but I thought it was just because she was a little tired, Kirsty sighed. Then we decided to go to the park. I thought some fresh air would make her feel better. Did you notice anyone else at the park? The detective asked, trying to explore every aspect. No, it was just me and the girls. Everyone else was focused on their own things, Kirsty replied, but anxiety began to rise within her. I didn't think anything strange happened. So after playing at the park, what did you do next? The detective continued. We went home and I cooked for the two girls. Fallon played with Harper all afternoon, she continued, her voice becoming nostalgic. When I put her down for a nap, everything was still normal. I couldn't imagine that everything would change in an instant. When you came back, the little girl was lying still. How did you feel then? The detective asked, trying to extract the emotions Kirsty had concealed. It was truly terrible, she admitted, her eyes welling up with tears. I felt like everything was collapsing around me. I just wanted to save the little girl. Painful memories surged like relentless waves. I called emergency services immediately, but I didn't know what to do, Kirsty sobbed, her heart filled with regret. I can't imagine this happening to the girl I love. Do you think someone harmed her? The detective asked, emphasizing the need to consider all possibilities. No, I don't think anyone else could have done that, Kirsty replied, but inside her, the pieces of the truth began to emerge. I was alone with the girls. I couldn't harm her. She felt as if her words lacked weight. But you know you were the last person with Fallon, the detective reminded her, not taking his eyes off Kirsty. You need to admit the truth. No one else was there. The feeling of guilt surged within, and Kirsty knew she had to confront something she had tried to deny. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention. Maybe she was hurt, and I didn't see it, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I never intended to hurt her. We need to know exactly what happened, the detective continued, his voice serious. You were with her, and now she is in critical condition. Please tell us what happened. Kirsty felt as if all the pressure was piling up on her shoulders. I don't want to think about this, she said, her voice becoming choked. I just want her to be healthy again. I don't want to see her in pain. But the reality is she is injured, and you are the only one who knows what happened, the detective replied, trying to keep the interrogation on track. Please tell us. Kirsty looked directly into the detective's eyes, tears beginning to fall. I can't keep living in lies anymore, she said, feeling like everything was falling apart. I don't know what happened to the little girl, but I feel like something is wrong. We all want to know that. Please tell us about the last moments, the detective said, their gaze firm yet full of compassion. The little girl cried, Kirsty admitted. When I returned, I saw Fallon lying still, and I didn't know what she had to endure. Did you try to save her? The detective asked, their tone starting to soften. I called emergency services immediately. But maybe I didn't do enough, Kirsty said, her voice full of pain. I can't live with this feeling. I can't accept that I hurt her. Everything is starting to become clearer, the detective said. You need to stand up and speak the truth. We will help you. Kirsty knew that this was her only chance to redeem herself, and she felt like she was at the threshold of life and death. I will speak, she promised, her eyes shining. I will not remain silent anymore. Lead to undesirable outcomes, but perhaps it was the only way to escape this nightmare. You can rest assured we will support you throughout this process, the detective affirmed. You are not alone. Kirsty felt a little comfort from those encouraging words. I will tell everything, she resolved. I won't stay silent any longer. Kirsty took a deep breath, as if preparing for a battle with herself. So, after I called for help, I tried to do everything I could, she said, her voice trembling. I checked the little girl's heartbeat, but I couldn't feel anything. I panicked. Every word from Kirsty seemed to unravel the truth. When the rescue workers arrived, I thought they would save her. I prayed for her to survive, she recalled, her eyes welling with tears. But the truth weighed heavily on me. The detectives looked at her, realizing that everything was beginning to clear up. Do you remember if anyone else was around when the incident occurred? They asked, trying to find out if anyone could corroborate her story. It was just me and the two girls, Kirsty replied, her eyes filled with worry. No one else was there. The feeling of guilt made her feel cornered. Is there anything unusual you can remember? Any signs that you might have overlooked? The detective asked again. No, nothing at all, Kirsty insisted. She was playing normally. There were no signs that this would happen. She felt as if a whirlwind was consuming her mind, memories and emotions swirling around. So what happened after you called for help? The detective continued, guiding the conversation deeper. I ran after the ambulance, Kirsty recalled. I couldn't think about anything else. I just wanted to know if she would be okay. When I got to the hospital, everything was chaotic. How did you feel at that moment? The detective asked, emphasizing the emotions she was experiencing. I felt like the world was collapsing, Kirsty admitted. I couldn't bear it if the girl didn't survive. She looked out the window as if hoping for a miracle to happen. But what really happened during that time? Was anyone there with you? The detective asked, wanting to delve deeper into those critical moments. I'm not sure, Kirsty said, a sense of helplessness washing over her. There might have been a few doctors, but I can't remember clearly. I just wanted to know that Fallon would be okay. Why didn't you mention your feelings when you saw the girl unconscious? The detective pressed on. Did you feel anything unusual before you called for help? I felt scared, Kirsty admitted, her voice choked. But I didn't want to believe that would happen. She sensed the truth slowly revealing itself, but fear still held her back. Do you think someone harmed the girl? The detective asked, their gaze tracking Kirsty's every reaction. I can't believe someone could do that, Kirsty replied, but inside her, a growing suspicion began to rise. I don't know, but I would never think that anyone else could do that. The detective listened intently to Kirsty's words, noticing the contradictions in her story. Do you know about Cameron's past? They asked, trying to uncover more information. Just little things. I don't think he could hurt anyone, Kirsty insisted, but the truth had started to sink into her mind. I don't think he did anything wrong. But you were the last one with Fallon, the detective emphasized. You need to be honest about what happened. Kirsty felt as if the pressure was mounting on her shoulders. She knew the truth needed to come out, but that could lead her to face terrible consequences. I don't want to think about it, she said, but she knew it was unavoidable. I don't want to see the girl harmed, Kirsty continued, but her voice had grown weaker. I just want everything to go back to normal. You have to speak up. There's no other way, the detective reminded her, their tone gentle yet firm. If you aren't honest, you won't be able to escape this situation. Kirsty felt as if everything was collapsing around her. She had been the caregiver, but now she had become a suspect. I will speak, she promised, tears streaming down her cheeks. I won't stay silent anymore. It felt like a door had opened, and Kirsty knew she would have to face the most horrific things in her life. I can't live in lies anymore, she said, her voice filled with determination. I will tell you everything. We will be here to listen to you, the detective replied, their gaze steady. Tell us what happened to Fallon. With each word, Kirsty gradually found the strength to reveal the truth. She knew this could change her life, but perhaps it was the only way to find the light in the darkness. Kirsty took a deep breath, trying to control her emotions as she prepared to recount what happened. I know I can't avoid the truth any longer. It was an ordinary day until everything changed, she began, her gaze distant. After bringing the girls home from the park, I saw Fallon and Harper playing in the room. Everything seemed fine until I went into the kitchen to prepare dinner, Kirsty said, her voice becoming more anxious. When I came back, I realized Fallon wasn't responding. Painful images whirl in her mind. I tried to wake the girl, but nothing happened. Really? Nothing. Her voice becomes choked as she recalls that horrifying moment. Can you tell us about the final moments? The detective gently asks, trying to keep the atmosphere from becoming too heavy. I was in a panic, Kirsty continues, tears beginning to flow. I called for help. I felt like everything was collapsing around me, but I didn't think to check the girl more closely. The detective nods, understanding the difficulties in Kirsty's mind. You need to tell us everything that happened during that time. I ran to call the doctor. I prayed. I couldn't believe this was happening to the girl I cared for. I love Fallon like my own daughter. Kirsty sobs. But now, I don't know what to do. Did anyone go into the girl's room while you weren't there? The detective asks, relentlessly seeking the missing pieces. No, it was just me and the two girls. I tried to keep everything under control, but maybe I was wrong, Kirsty replies, her voice filled with anxiety. I don't think I did enough to protect the girl. If something happened to the girl, you need to admit it, the detective continues, trying to awaken Kirsty's sense of responsibility. Could someone have entered the room during that time? No, I'm sure there wasn't, Kirsty refutes, but the uncertainty begins to show in her words. I can't think about that. I can't. The detective continues to listen, taking notes of every word from Kirsty. Why don't you think something was wrong with Fallon? I don't know. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention. Maybe something happened that I didn't realize, Kirsty admits, her voice becoming weak. But I can't imagine that someone could hurt the girl. You were the only one with the girl. We need you to be honest, the detective emphasizes. What really happened in that room? Kirsty feels as if her world is collapsing. I can't lie anymore. I can't, she sobs, tears streaming down her face. I tried to do everything right, but I was wrong. I couldn't protect the girl. The detective nods, seeing the truth beginning to unfold. We will help you, but you must be honest. I will speak out. I won't stay silent anymore, Kirsty promises, determination in her eyes. I just hope the girl will rest in peace. As everything begins to clarify, the detective realizes that Kirsty's story has shifted from fear to a heartbreaking truth. Thank you for sharing, the detective says gently. We will do everything we can to help you and Fallon. Kirsty feels as if a door has opened to the truth, but she knows that it also means facing responsibility. I will live with this pain forever, she sobs. I can't forgive myself. And so, the story of Fallon comes to a close, but the pain and loss will never fade from the hearts of...
Fallon's story ends. But the pain doesn't. Kirsty's admission she may have missed something feels like a knife twist. Legally, negligence can be as damning as intent, and she'll carry that guilt forever. This case reminds us how fragile trust is when caring for a child. Fallon deserved better, and her family's left with scars that won't heal. It's a call to all of us. Protect the vulnerable. Demand the truth. Let's honor Fallon by learning from this tragedy. Share your thoughts. What would you have done differently?